Time I remember dealing with rejection in a major way. It changed my life.
What did you learn about it?
I was in college and I wasn't dating anyone, and they had this black tie event at the school every year. And I just decided I was going to ask the cutest guy I knew on campus to go to this event with me. I never saw him with a date or anyone, so I figured he was single and it was fine. And it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't asking him to be my boyfriend.
Yeah,
just go to this
thing.
event.
Yeah.
Go to this thing. And so I walked up to him one day in the student union and I said, "Hey, Chris, this event is coming up Friday night. It's black tie. You know, it's our big annual event every year. Would you mind going with me?" He looked at me and he paused and he said, "Can I let you know? Can I get back to you?" And I said, "Okay." And I saw him the next day, and I talk about this story in the book. I saw him the next day and he walked over to me and he said, "Listen, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for inviting me to, but I can't go. So I'm not going to be able to make it, but have fun." So I was like, wow, okay. And I would see him around and I was a little embarrassed about it, felt
you asked and you got rejected. Yeah.
But I went to the event and I had a good time. I just didn't understand. I was like, well, I don't understand. It wasn't a big deal. Why couldn't he just go to the event with me? 5 years later, I was walking down the street in my college town and I walked into a store and he was in the store. And he called me over and he said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Do you remember several years ago when we were in school and you asked me to go to this event?" I really didn't remember. I had forgotten. It had been 5 years. But as he started telling me about I started to think, and I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he was like, "Well, I just wanted you to know, I want you to know that I actually really liked you. And I really wanted to go to this function with you." But he said, "I didn't have a suit. And I didn't have any money to get a suit, and I had nothing to wear, and I was too embarrassed to tell you."
Man.
Now, I was thinking, because I thought back at this time, everybody had one of those oversized Steve Harvey suits in their closet, some Stacey Adams they could just pull out on occasion. But he didn't. What that moment taught me was, I ran into him randomly 5 years later, but how many times do we go through rejection and we take it so personal and we make it about us and we go down this rabbit hole of, oh, he didn't like me because I'm not cute enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not funny enough. And we make up all these reasons in our mind when it could really be just somebody doesn't have a suit or whatever their reason is that has nothing to do with you. When I talk about going through dating experiences and going through rejections and going through those relationships, I learned every step along the way.
Yeah.
And every time I would go through it, it would get a little less painful. And I would learn a little more. And I would take what I learned and I would apply it to the next relationship. So by the time I got to the point where I was going through this breakup, 6 months before meeting my husband, I said, "Oh no, I know what to do. I know how to handle this.
Yes.
And I'm going to approach this in a completely different manner." And you know what I said for the first time in my life?
What?
I said, this moment, this breakup is opening up the door for me to meet my husband.
Wow.
In my
Did
life,
you know
because I used to get asked a lot why I was still single for so long. And I started to feel pressure from people. I never put the pressure on myself. And I know a lot of people perhaps do. But if you're not careful when you're single and people are asking you, "Well, I don't understand, why aren't you married?" or "What's going on?" you can start to internalize it and feel that there's something wrong with you or that there's something off within you. And it can almost be something that you become embarrassed by, because people are asking you as if you've missed some mark in your life, some milestone that you should have achieved by now. Not asking me if it was a desire of mine, by the way, if I wanted to, but just asking me, why wasn't I? And
why do you think people care so much about other people being in a relationship or being single?
Well, the question, I think, speaks more to who they are than it ever did to who I was, because I was okay. There were lessons that I had to learn to get to the place where I could go into a successful marriage. I needed to learn those lessons. There are almost 8 billion people on this planet. we can't all be doing the same things at the same time, and we're not supposed to be. We're all supposed to be living our individual life paths and our individual life journeys. There are some people who don't think that. They think you need to be married by a certain age, you need to have children by a certain age, or you're not living the right path.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Right.
This is not a race. Why is it not a race? Because we're not all running in the same direction. So I learned very early on, and I think living in New York actually helped with that, because I was around so many other young professionals who were, at the top of their games and their careers. And we were, Saturday night we're here, Wednesday night we're at a show, and the live music and everything, and just embracing our full lives and accepting that being single was not a rest stop for me until I met my husband and really got to live. Well, if I had done that, I wouldn't have lived until I was 42 years old. Right. So what would I have done with all those years in my 20s and 30s? So it wasn't a rest stop. And I embraced that time and just did so many. I traveled all around the world by myself, solo. Went to all the restaurants that I wanted to go to, watching Sex in the City. Sometimes I would go by myself. I had this vibrant group of friends. I was not waiting to live my life. And I think that people, they project their own view of what they think life should be onto you. And so it's our job as individuals to, again, reframe our perspective and mindset and make a decision for ourselves that we're going to live our own life path and embrace that life path.
Absolutely.
And be happy in that life path.
What about a lot of people talk about the big red flags, like, okay, he or she is cheating, lying, out of integrity, whatever, in another relationship on the side, like these big red flags. What about the subtle red flags that maybe you saw over time, but you didn't take action on, and you realized, oh, that was actually a much bigger flag but it was subtle. Like, I let it kind of slip. What are those subtle red flags?
If you tell me you're a vegan,
and you eat meat,
and I see you on Snapchat eating some wings,
right.
You may think that's a small lie,
Interesting.
right? But what does it say about that person? It's saying that for some reason they feel that they can't be their true selves with you.
Interesting.
They're trying to project someone who they think may impress you, and it's not really who they are. So when you see those subtle things that you don't understand, well, why didn't this person just be true and honest with me about this? This was a small thing. How do you think they're going to handle the big things? So I actually look at those little things. What kind of digital footprint are people leaving online, on their social media? What do they think is funny? I remember once someone wanted to set me up on a blind date with an actor. Here in LA, and I looked at him. I'm sure he had no shortage of women lining up to date him. And he'd reached out to a person who he knew was a mutual friend and said, I'd like to meet Faith. Would you set me up with her? Well, I went and looked on his social media. And he had a joke that he put on his social media that I thought was really crude and that I didn't think was funny, but he thought it was funny. But in that moment, I said, I'm not going to go out on a date with him. Some people may think, wow, you didn't even give him a chance. You didn't even, again, I know myself now. I know myself, and I know that when I date somebody, even what they put out publicly on their social media, that's a reflection of me. That's a reflection of our relationship. That's a reflection of all those things. You may think that joke was small, but to me, it represented a bigger picture of what I thought would be incompatibility.
How important is compatibility versus connection and chemistry? Of the three, connection, chemistry, and compatibility, which one is most important in your mind?
Well, you need all three. When I think about compatibility, I think about not just making a decision about where you are now in your life. Because over time, when you get into a relationship, as time goes on, people are going to change. When you lose a job or you get a new job, you have children, you don't have children, you go through certain stressful situations with your family, your health, all of these things in life, they continue to change us and shape us into who we are. So when I think about compatibility, I think about a person who is committed to a certain level of growth. You are not just going together in the future, you are growing together.
Ooh, yes.
And so that love has to be about being committed to the same commitment and a certain level of growth.
When someone wants to continue growing and developing themselves and the other person doesn't want to, what happens in a relationship or a marriage when they're different there?
It's easy to fall in love, I think.
Yeah.
I think it takes work to stay there. And so one example, I had a couple come into divorce court and the wife said, initially our marriage was great, like most marriages, but over time, he started saying things to me that would really hurt my feelings. I gained weight. I gained 15, 20 pounds over the last couple of years, and he would comment on my weight. And we were initially committed to just building each other up. And even when we had criticism to share with each other, we were always constructive. And we always thought, how can I say this in the most loving way? And so she said she continued to grow in that area, but he didn't. And I turned to him and I said, so what happened? He said, well, I'm just speaking the truth. I said, would you ever say to a stranger the things that you're saying to your wife? This is supposed to be your best friend. He worked in a restaurant. I said, would you ever say those things to a patron in your restaurant? The things that you're saying to your wife? He said, I don't believe in divorce. We're Christians. We don't get divorced. I said, really? What does God say about love? You're a Christian. What does God say about love? Love is kind.
Love is patient.
Love is patient. Love doesn't envy. Love certainly doesn't try to tear the other person down. So the commitment to that growth, it really shows up in the long term, in the longevity of the relationship.
Absolutely.
And if someone's not committed, again, you have to protect your peace. I would never advise staying in a relationship where you are being emotionally abused and disrespected, because I'm going to tell you what happens. It breaks my heart to see people come in and they've been in these relationships for so long where they have been repeatedly dishonored.
Yeah.
You know why? Because over time, when people have been repeatedly disrespected and dishonored, it becomes normal to them. It becomes familiar. And they in turn start to think they've been dishonored so much that they are not indeed worthy of honor because they've been dishonored repeatedly. Pain will subside in time after you leave if you do the work, but it will always be there if you stay in that type of situation.
What would you say are the main causes of divorce then? Is it cheating? Is it disrespect? Is it a lack of growth? Is it foul play, emotional abuse? What are the main causes you see?
People not being committed to the same commitment, and that is the growth, the love, the respect, finding out how your partner wants to be loved, because everybody wants to be loved in a different way, and it may change over time. So you're constantly evolving, and a part of your job as a good partner is to find out, how does this person want to be loved? If you stop doing all of those things, it's like if you maintain and you take care of your yard, what are the things you do to take care of your yard? You have to mow the lawn, take care of the grass, fertilize it, pull out the weeds, all of those things to keep the yard looking great, to keep it growing. There are going to be seasons. There are going to be seasons. It may be dry one season. It may be a rainy season. You're going to go through the storms. But just like in life, the seasons are going to change. But what are you doing to maintain throughout all of those things? Being committed to doing the work to maintain the relationship throughout the seasons is what speaks to success. And I see the opposite end of that.
Yeah.
Because at no point can you just think that being on autopilot is what's going to keep moving forward.
Right.
We thought we're in great relationships, and then for one reason or another, they don't work out.
Right.
And you think, and it shakes you.
And you're like, if they didn't make it work, how am I going to make it work?
Right. And it shakes you. And so, again, it builds on that fear. I had to stop this notion of, I'm going to protect myself by not putting myself out there because then I won't get hurt again. That fear wasn't really protecting me. What it was really doing was poisoning my perspective. And I knew that I was not going to be able to step into the greatest relationship that I really wanted to have with that poisonous perspective. Everything is an opportunity to learn, and everything is an opportunity to grow. So whether it was watching my parents and what they did, a lot of times you watch certain things and you learn what not to do. And just taking all of those experiences, and I was jaded at some point. I did go through a period where I was cynical, but I had to reframe and reshape my own perspective and decide how I wanted to live my life and what perspective I really wanted to have. And I just made a decision that I was going to go forward and believe that I could have the type of love in my life that I wanted. Because if I didn't believe it, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So despite seeing all of these other things around me, I looked at other people who had been successful. I looked at people who had good experiences. I listened to things that would build up my faith. And I learned how to navigate when I dealt with rejection or betrayal or hurt or pain. 6 months before I met my husband, I went through a breakup.
Right.
And I remember that day crying, upset. Again, my feelings are hurt. I'm human. I'm having that human moment. But I also remember that day deciding, okay, you know what to do. You've been through this.
You're a pro at
a
going
bunch
through
of times. And you've learned, but the key was I learned every time it happened.